Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to day two of the Youth Climate Summit. I'm so excited to see everyone back and ready for the day. Just before we jump in, I would like to remind everyone about our track selection that is happening tomorrow. A part of these sessions is to help you make an informed decision on the track that you wish to choose during track selection. Please remember that people who have registered as alumni in the original YCS registration form can sign up for the alumni session. I am your host for today, Leah Jeremy, and with me is
Your other co-host, William Campbell. We're very pleased to have you all back again with us today. Thanks so much. And we're looking forward to another day of interactive programming with youth activists and subject matter experts and local NGOs working on climate change issues. Before we get into today's program, we actually wanted to acknowledge that some of you had questions for some of our youth activists yesterday that we didn't actually have time in the program to acknowledge. But we have been able to go back and have a word with those youth activists and to relay some of your questions to them and to get answers for those questions for you too. So we went back and we had answer from Sarah Goody too on the question, how do you stay motivated and hopeful in the face of the climate crisis? To which I'm happy to read out Sarah's answer. I stay motivated by actively seeking solutions and by staying informed about positive developments through platforms like Daily Climate Good News and Happy Eco News. Spending time outdoors and immersing myself in nature also grounds me, reminding me that I'm fighting to protect while prioritizing my mental and physical well-being. Hope really comes from engaging with communities of like-minded people that are passionate about climate change. These connections provide support and inspire optimism for the planet's future. And if you're interested, then you can explore some of these communities at the Youth Climate Organizations, for which we will have the links posted in the chat very soon.
Another question that we had Sarah Goody answer was, what do you think would have happened if you didn't succeed? And Sarah states, I don't see anything as a failure if it teaches me something valuable. While some of my initiatives gained support from the press, leaders, and politicians, others didn't receive the same attention. Even when things don't go as planned, I view these experiences as stepping stones. Each effort provides lessons that inform and improve my next endeavor. Those are amazing answers to these questions from Sarah Goody. And I would just like to move us into our first Menti poll of the day. Remember, just like yesterday, the Menti poll link will be dropped in the chat. You can click on this link and remember to keep that tab open because that is the link that we will be using for the duration of the session. Our first Menti poll question of the day is, what is a small action that you can take on a daily basis to help the climate? Right. I'm seeing a lot of people mentioning that they don't litter or they'll pick up trash in the environment, avoiding using single-use plastics, recycling, yes. These are really amazing small actions that anyone can take just to help make our environment a better and cleaner place. These are great. It's a lot of picking up trash, not using single-use plastics, using public transport, picking up trashes on the beaches. Yes. And picking up trash, using electric vehicles as to not use so much gas or smoke. Yes. These are great answers. I love that. Thank you so much. All right. I love these answers that were coming in from everybody. And now I will introduce our first youth activist of the day is Sharona Schneider. Sharona will have 6 minutes to present. Our next youth activist will present right after her. And then there will be time for a Q&A with both of them. So I encourage you to put your questions in the chat for them as they present. And I will chime in for Sharona when there's 1 minute left for her presentation. So everyone, please join me in welcoming Sharona Schneider.
Hi, everyone. I'm currently at the airport on my way to you, so I really hope that I don't get kicked out of the Wi-Fi, but I'm really excited to be here and to present, and I have a bit of a story to tell you. This presentation is going to be about how I went from trash to change. So imagine I'm sitting in my dorm, scrolling mindlessly through Instagram, just another day, a deadline for my accounting assignments. I've chosen this path because it's safe, it's predictable, it's what my parents wanted me to do. And suddenly a friend shares a video and it catches my eye because there's this girl, she's 17, and she's speaking to world leaders at the UN. Her voice is breaking through the noise and she's upset, almost furious, talking about climate change like it's the end of everything. And it is. It's Greta Thunberg. And it's the first time that I see someone around my age who's using her voice to do something big, something real. And I can't shake this feeling that if I didn't join, I would regret not doing my part to help. And so I remembered when I was a kid, when I was 6 years old, I would go outside splashing in puddles just with my friends. Our roads would turn into rivers. And it was, probably the second day of a flash flood. This was not out of the ordinary. Me and my friends would put on our rain boots, we'd wade through the waters, we'd catch frogs, and we would laugh like it was just another game. But it wasn't, because it was also me seeing my mom at home, unable to work, knowing what that means. It's another day of lost income for her. And flash floods would become a part of our lives. We would go get used to them, but I knew at the time and also now that this wasn't something normal. It was the world that my mom grew up in. It was the world that I'm growing up in, but it's not a world that we're meant to live in. And unfortunately, it's one that we were facing. So somehow we had to keep moving forward. And at the age of 6, and throughout my childhood, I never stopped to ask why. But then came that video of Greta, and I became activated. I became inspired. I was determined to help and do something. And I started looking up facts. I started doing research, finding out all of this information, reading reports and diving into all of these facts that were telling me that in my community, I was understanding why was there extreme flooding? Why was there food and water insecurity? For the first time, I was applying my analytical mind to something that truly mattered. And it wasn't just another assignment, it was my future. I didn't want to look back and wish I'd done more. So I decided it was time to stop being complacent and start taking action. And I started very simply, just by using reusable utensils and volunteering with climate groups, doing clothing swaps with my friends. And soon at 19, I found myself lobbying for clean energy jobs in front of the Senate during the floods in Oregon. I couldn't help but feel this pride cultivating in myself the power that I saw in Greta. But then COVID hit and the world shut down. And I came back to my room on Instagram, scrolling again, just feeling trapped and disconnected. And I thought back to that day that I saw Greta standing up fearless, demanding change. She was a rebel, but an effective one. And she was using her voice and her actions to show that she cared, and she was demanding change. She didn't fear the government. She didn't fear being punished or was playing by the rules. And I told myself, if she can do it, then so can I. And so I began again. And I thought of what was the simplest, easiest thing that I could do to take action. And it was picking up trash, like many of you said in the poll. It started small, just me and a friend. Then we asked our other friends to do it. And soon we saw that people around the world were joining. And I thought, you know what? Let's get together. Let's create a group and let's do it together. And so the very first Tuesdays for Trash cleanup started in the heart of a predominantly Black marginalized community in Portland, Oregon. Over 50 people showed up, and we were in the middle of this pandemic. It was COVID, and people were scared. But that day, we took back control, and I realized that this is bigger than trash. This is community. This is resilience. This is hope. It was our future. So I didn't stop. And today, Tuesdays for Trash is global. We've reached 50 countries. We've removed over 80,000 pounds of trash across 6 continents. And it all started with that one simple act of picking up trash. And it gave me the confidence to reach even further, to take more action, and to make bigger impacts. And so I worked with embassies, I worked with environmental ministries, waste management, and urban infrastructure. I rallied more communities, and together we influenced policies. We created educational memes that went viral, and we made headlines. And I started to feel so empowered, knowing that caring out loud led to these tangible impacts. And I've also learned that I'm not here to sit on the sidelines and scroll through Instagram or blend in. I'm here to be a fully participating, impactful citizen and leader. And I also learned that it takes something to do this. You have to deal with your own insecurities, your own programming, and your own thoughts of what makes me capable. And I took action anyway because I knew that the future I envisioned was possible and worth fighting for, despite the potential of embarrassment or failure. I saw I had to care out loud, take the risk of failure, and to push back my own personal limiting views. Because if I didn't risk it, I would risk even more. And once you start caring out loud, your life starts to have this profound meaning to it. You start to realize why you are here and the power that you have. And since stepping forward, I've seen myself grow into someone unafraid to challenge the status quo. When others care out loud, I realize that we become unstoppable. And it's because each voice amplifies the next. We create a powerful echo that can change minds and move mountains. And now I want you guys to think about your life and what you want to do with it. I know that you've shown up here for a reason, and it's not just because you had nothing else to do. I see you, and I get that you're here
Sharona,
because...
just letting you know you have 1 more minute.
No worries. I get that you're here because you know you want to make a difference, and now is the time to see yourself and that vision for yourself and take actions that align with that. So to you, declare out loud what you want to do more in your life, and remember that I started with just reusable utensils and went from there. And you can start small, but just don't stop, because you were given a prompt to think about. And I want you to think about those little actions, how they can guide you to think about what you want to create and who you want to be. Because you're not a drop of water in the ocean of challenges. You are the voice that matters. And everyone can be the catalyst in their own community and impact the world. To realize the capacity that you hold, because there is nothing extraordinary about me. I'm an ordinary woman doing extraordinary things, and so can you.
Thank you so much for your presentation, and we will see you back for Q&A after our next youth activist, Alex Pilgrim, comes and shares his presentation. Just as Sharona, I will give a 1 minute reminder when there is only a minute left for Alex's presentation, and then we will see both of them back for the Q&A. So can we all please welcome Alex Pilgrim for his presentation?
Hi there, how's everyone doing? Let me just share my screen here. Okay. Can everyone see this?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Alrighty. So yeah, my name is Alex, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my climate journey. So just some background for you guys. I was born and raised in Bermuda. I'm 23 now. But sort of being in and around the water is where I found my passion for the environment. You know, I've noticed a lot of changes over the years. I'll talk to you guys a little bit about that. But, you know, witnessing these changes really had me curious about what might be going on in the environment. So I wanted to showcase these. So I got into underwater photography. The photos that you'll see throughout these are all mine, with the exception of one. But yeah, I thought that was probably the best way to sort of showcase what's actually going on in the underwater world. So yeah, what sort of raised climate awareness for me is spending a lot of time underwater, swimming along the reef networks. You notice all these different things happening, right? So you got changes in color of the corals, coral bleaching. I'm sure we've all heard about that. But there's more than just that. You see there's changes in fish species, there's changes in the levels of fish, and even more, you can feel that there's a change in the temperature of the water throughout the year, like exacerbated, obviously, during summer months and everything like that. And so noticing all of these and seeing all of this really had me curious about why this might be happening and how the ocean plays a role in general with the climate. And so doing some more looking into, I found out that, the ocean is the biggest carbon sink in the world. Lots of people talk about the rainforests, the Amazon being the lungs of the earth. Well, it's kind of actually the ocean. So the ocean has about 50 times more carbon in it than the atmosphere does. And it absorbs, probably over 30% of our greenhouse gas emissions that we produce when we burn fossil fuels, which is, something that we really have to try and mitigate, right? But I guess this is a story of conservation. In order to maintain, decent levels of carbon in the atmosphere, we need to, monitor the ocean's productivity, make sure it's still being as productive as it once was. And we need to conserve blue carbon areas. So, those of you in Bermuda, we've got lots of mangroves, and they actually sequester far more carbon than a typical land-based plant. So, we really need to make sure that we're looking after our own local environment. And then sustainable fisheries as well. So fish play a humongous role in marine ecosystems, and if things like overfishing and plastic pollution all diminish their populations. So, it's a big holistic role that we all have to play in monitoring the ocean as a carbon sink. But being a small island, we face lots of climate issues in a disproportionate way. So I'm sure lots of you have seen, some of our cliffs have been receding on the coast due to sea level rises. We're experiencing more flooding than we've ever done. We've got more intense hurricanes and more frequent hurricanes as well. Going back to corals, what we've noticed, I'm not sure if you can see in this photo here, but there's lots of bleached corals where they've just lost their algae, due to these external stressors like, ocean warming, ocean acidification, all things which we need to try and get on top of to try and mitigate. And also, the biodiversity has been changing rapidly with the same stresses. So all of which sort of entails into a positive feedback loop regarding the health of our oceans. And I think that's a very key place that we can start focusing on. So being curious about the ocean from a very, very young age, I naturally wanted to learn more and more about it. And I decided to do that through my degree choices in education. So I studied environmental science and economics for my undergrad in Colorado. That was mainly to understand what's going on in our climate, but also, the economic side of it's just as fundamental, because we need to be able to pay for fixing it. We can't just wave a wand and expect it to be back to normal. Everything comes at a cost, and so balancing what climate mitigation procedures we can go with and the financial element of that is going to be critical. And right now I'm actually in the UK studying renewable energy engineering, and I'm looking at basically green energy solutions for electricity production. So we're looking into solar, wind, offshore wind, and even tidal energy, which is, harnessing the energy from tidal stream and tidal currents, in the hope that we can apply that to, the world in a holistic manner. I think, electricity production burns the most fossil fuels in the world. We all need electricity. And so it's a way of doing that in a sustainable manner and a green manner. And so I think that's going to be absolutely fundamental to the future and the biggest chance of us mitigating climate change. So you can also apply all of this. I'm hoping to apply what I've learned and get a job out of it. Obviously, I hope it's not all for nothing. So my focus right now is, as I say, engineering. And we're looking at deploying sustainable energy solutions worldwide. I think my area of interest is offshore wind. It seems to be the most prosperous in the field of green energy. And so I'm looking to explore that a lot more, hopefully maybe look into its potential in and around Bermuda. But obviously we've got lots of solar because, it's ideal climate for that. But then there's other areas that I might be interested in, or any of you students looking for a career in technological innovation. I think that's probably the most important thing that you can do as an individual for the climate, is go out there and get a job in, creating the solutions that we need. So yeah, as I say, there's other things you can do. There's environmental engineering, which could be looking into things like waste management, pollution control, sustainable design. So you could work with other people like architects and environmental designers and stuff like that. But also,
This is just your 1-minute warning.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. If we're looking into the development of things like solar panels or wind turbines, they all cost fossil fuels to manufacture, right? So it's how we can mitigate that. So you could do that through environmental engineering as well. And then there's environmental science, which is, using climate models to predict what we might need to address first in terms of climate mitigation. All of which, they're going to be fundamental to helping solve the problems that we see as climate change. So I hope that you guys can get motivated like I am and be a part of the solution in a manner that, we can do this. We can help stop climate change. We just need to have the right tools and follow the right path in life. Education is fundamental to all of that. So I hope you guys consider, a degree in engineering. But best of luck with everything. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that presentation, and both of your presentations were really inspiring, very informative, and I hope that we've all learned a lot. And now we can move into the Q&A with Sharona and Alex. So guys, just remember to put your questions for them in the chat. And the first question I would like to ask for Sharona, what are some key takeaways or outcomes from Tuesdays for Trash that surprised you?
I think the biggest surprises were how much people paid attention, because when we first started cleaning up, it was just me and my friend. And all of a sudden we had people, like not only our friends, but people that would see us cleaning up and want to join or ask what we were doing, get involved. And I think that's what's really unique, is that we're not just doing something positive, we're creating community and showing people that they're not alone in caring for their environment. I think also just the things that followed, like because of all of these people believing in our idea and like helping continue the movement and spreading it across the world. I had opportunities to work with National Geographic, to do a bunch of podcasts and like interviews, and like all of a sudden all of this attention is on me, when it really is the community and the people that have participated that create the movement into what it is today. So I think you'd be surprised how much people genuinely want to get involved and help, and will support you when you are passionate and you believe in something.
Thank you. Alex, from Barkley Institute, what age did you start diving and how did you get into it?
I probably started diving properly at about 12 or 13, I think. I think 12 is about as soon as you can do your scuba diving certification. But I think I got into it because I felt a little limited in Bermuda just because there's so little land. So, there's all this water around you, and it is abundant with life and adventure. So I suppose I just wanted to explore that a bit further. But yeah, I'd say quite a young age, and it's, I've just been spending more and more time in the ocean as much as I can, anyways, every single time I go home.
Thank you. Sharona, do you believe that Nigeria's position as a major oil producer complicates its response to climate change?
I think definitely like the way the governments are run and their position when it comes to the environment is always super important factor when it comes to not only creating change, but helping create systems that avoid the challenges that we're seeing today. And the alternatives are already available. It's just the convenience that a lot of manufacturers and governments see an obstacle for. So it's up to us as citizens to show our representatives that this isn't something that we should continue to support, that our future is more important, and really making your voice heard and talking about it and caring out loud, like I said, is the best way to address it.
Thank you. Alex, what advice would you give to someone trying to follow a similar path in education?
I think I never really knew what I wanted to do at a young age. I mean, I knew what was important to me. I think I always cared about the environment, but I think it's never too late really to decide what it is you want to do. I mean, I never really got into the engineering side of environment until very recently. So I'd say just do what you enjoy, and then as long as you do that, you're gonna be happy. And I think the environment, if you really care about it, you're gonna do something to help it. So just don't overthink. Do what you enjoy.
And Sharona, what are you looking forward to the most for when you come to Bermuda?
I think just to see what the community is like. Something so special for me about the work that I do is that I do it because I genuinely love our planet and our home, and getting to see different cultures and communities and finding ways to help is a really big passion of mine. So I'm excited to just learn more about the way of life in Bermuda, to understand what the environmental challenges are and what I can do not only while I'm there, but from abroad as well to support a cleaner and healthier future for all of us.
Thank you so much to both of you for your presentations and for answering our questions. I was really inspired and motivated by your presentations for sure, so I'm very sure that everyone out there watching was as well. I would just like to pass on to my co-host William now to introduce our subject matter expert of the day.
Thanks so much, Leah. And just a reminder as well, to keep any questions you might have for Sharona as well on hand, because you will have the opportunity to ask her, as well as our youth activist from yesterday, Pahonu, any other questions you might have on site at BUEI on Thursday. So I'm going to introduce our subject matter expert for the day, who is Mr. Bry Beltran, who is a spatial ecologist with an extensive knowledge of species distribution modeling when climate and land use change effects on ecosystems and conservation science. He holds a Master's of Science in Environmental Life Sciences from Arizona State University, and his career goal is to promote biological conservation and sustainability in socio-ecological systems using the ecosystem services framework to inform policy and decision-making. Please join me in welcoming Bry Beltran.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to start sharing my screen here. And thank you for having me here. And today, more than my expertise in climate change, which is a very important topic, and obviously the topic of the conversation today, I want to talk to you about my approach to conservation in general, and I want to make a few invitations. I want to invite you to look at perhaps start considering conservation and some of the concepts that we look at conservation. Through conservation in under a different light, or at the very least start questioning some of those and see where that would take us. So the title of my presentation is, "It is not just a moral argument. Justice is conservation's way forward." So before we get into this, I wanted to take a little bit of time to just tell you who I am, where I come from, kind of like my origin story. I was born and raised in Colombia on the north beaches of the Caribbean coast in Colombia. My home city is called Santa Marta. I was born to a high school dropout teenage mother, who is the woman that you see with the beautiful white dress with the Colombian flag on it. That is my mother and I dancing a Colombian dance at my wedding 8 years ago. So I am an immigrant. I am a son. I am a father. You see my wife and my two daughters in our first backpack trip that we took this summer. I took my daughters for 2 nights into the wild, and they hiked 8 miles. And the favorite part of the trip was hiking for them. So that was a win for me. And my occupation, I serve Ocean Conservancy, which is an organization that protects the ocean from today's greatest challenges. And today's greatest challenges are biodiversity decline, climate change, and pollution. And for recreation, I just mentioned backpacking and being outside. And my motivation really is not just my 2 girls, but you guys as that generation that I have to give back a world that you can thrive and where you're well and your well-being is good. When I'm in my older age and you hold me accountable, hopefully I can say I not only did my best, but I did everything I could in order to give you a planet where you could be happy and thrive. So that's a little bit about me. And now let's get into the matter of the presentation. But first, I want you to go to Mentimeter and give me 2 or 3 examples of what nature or the environment is to you. Just tell me. Excellent. All right, what else? 9 responses. I see there's 130 of you. Trees, yeah. Grass, that's an interesting one. Excellent. Right, grassy fields, ocean, great coral reef system. Interesting. Nature, hurricanes and corals. Great. Mountains, waterfalls. Ooh, I see my favorite answer there. Somebody wrote humans. That is very good. Somebody says restricted areas. Yeah, waterfalls, seaweed, wildlife. Okay, but look at the big words, right? Lakes, trees, ocean, animals, right? Like it's kind of like what we are talking about here. Right. So when you guys finish responding there, why did I ask that question? I asked you that question because in general, right, when we think about the environment and nature, or when we hear others talk to us about environment and nature, we hear about these things, these places that are far from where we are, right? Places that nature ends up being a place where humans are not, and somehow nature and humans were separated at some point. And so that's why when I saw humans, like, yes, somebody is really beautiful. Yeah. So thank you so much for participating on this poll. So yes, right, like a classical definition of nature, the environment, wilderness, right? It's an area, wilderness. This is how it got defined in the Wilderness Act here in the United States. An area where the earth and its community of life are untrammeled. Fancy word for saying it's like, nobody goes there. Untrammeled by man, where man himself is a visitor who does not remain. The conservation movement is created in this false dichotomy, as I call it, right? It's like where nature is that thing out there far away where humans are not. And we forgot that we are part of these surroundings, and that our surroundings, we are not better or less than the things around it. We're just part of the world. But conservation is cemented on this thing that tells us like what is conservation? What is protection? A national park. Let's go and, right, like the ideas like what Sharona was talking about, is like those are new ideas because those were considered other things until recently. That was not like a real conservation, right? So I want to transition a little bit to like, just this concept of empty wilderness and the empty landscapes that need to be protected from humankind damaging them. There's never been an empty wilderness. There were about 120 million people living in the Americas before Christopher Columbus came here. There were about 10 million people living in the Amazon before 1492, right? So indigenous management, people relate here in the Americas, indigenous people have been living here between 16 and 22,000 years. And if we go back to Africa, where we came from, we have been there for hundreds of thousands of years. So these empty spaces that we think of or that we hear about have been spaces that have been heavily managed by people for a long time. And it's that indigenous management that we have now taken out of the equation that has created these beautiful places that we think are worth protection and that are pristine. I'm going to give you 3 examples. I just mentioned there were about 10 million people living in the Amazon before 1492. There was a study, a really cool study that they did in 2017, where they took 1,000 archaeological sites, so 1,000 villages around the Amazon, and about half the trees in the Amazon belong to 227 species. And those 227 species, most of them are domesticated species that produce Brazil nuts and cashew nuts and acai nuts and rubber. So what that means is the Amazon, this pristine forest that everyone's like, oh, wow, it's like it's untrammeled, it's untouched, had been heavily managed and heavily manicured by people who were relating to that surroundings so they could live happy, thriving lives, right? We were the ones that created that concept of the Amazon being something that needed to be protected because humans had never interacted with it. Here in the United States, the US plains, there were about 40 million buffalo until European expansion came west that were killed because that was the main source of food for indigenous people. So by killing their food, they were trying to kill indigenous people in the United States. And those plains were created by heavy fire management from indigenous people. So they would burn, and for thousands of years, they burned the plains, which allow for the grasses to grow and allow for the buffalo to start roaming and continue to multiply. When we went west, we was like, oh, look, this is beautiful and untrammeled and pristine. Let's protect it as it is. And we didn't take into account all of that management that had been there. And currently in the Serengeti, that's the picture that you see there, the Maasai are being evicted by an area that people want to make a national park because they say that the Maasai practices will damage the ecological value of this national park. When it was the Maasai management for thousands of years that created the conditions for the elephants and the zebras and the gazelles to actually live there. Right? So, right, there's no empty wilderness. We humans have had these intricate and intimate relationships with our surroundings for thousands of years. And why have we had that relationship? Because as we take care of those surroundings have taken care of us. So there has been a reciprocity, which is, right, to maintain the health, by maintaining the health of our surroundings, those surroundings have provided us the gifts for our lives. They have provided us with materials for housing. They have provided us with food. They have provided us with the clean water that we need. They have provided us with clean air and with spiritual enrichment and enjoyment and the nourishment, the physical nourishment that we need. So it is that reciprocity that we have forgotten in conservation, that we have been active participants and active managers of our surroundings in order to live the best lives that we can. So my invitation today is for you to perhaps think, let's go through an exercise. And I'm not saying you have to change this. You have to go the Bry Beltran way or or there is no future. But what about if instead of looking at nature as a thing, as an empty place where humans are not, we redefine nature as an active relationship with our surroundings? So protecting nature would not mean just protecting a national park. It would mean being in good relationship with my surroundings. And you guys know what being in good relationship is, right? Like you have a brother or a sister, a mom or a dad, an auntie or an uncle, a grandparent that you love very much, your best friend. And you know when you're good with them, right? And you know when you're not good with them. So what about if we take that? It's like, how are you good with your immediate surrounding, right? And as Sharona was saying, remember that individual action creates collective change. What about if each one of us is now in good relationship with our surroundings? And it's an active relationship to be good with our surrounding. If you do it in Bermuda and I do it here in Washington, D.C., and somebody does it somewhere else, all of a sudden our action of being in good relationship with our surrounding starts spreading, starts taking care of some of the problems that we have, right? All of a sudden, maybe we're not losing so many species. Maybe we're not transforming so much land. Maybe we're not using so much fossil fuels, but looking for alternatives because we want to be in that good relationship. So think about that for a second. What is being in good relationship with your surroundings mean for you? So, right? But then I think that's radical, right? It's like, oh, nature is not a place, but rather a relationship, right? Do we really need to rethink nature? Like, why, right? Like, we have conservation. What is the point of rethinking nature? I think that doing that allows us to be hopeful for the future, right? Because I put the starting point of the conservation movement 150 years ago when the creation of the first national park, which was Yellowstone National Park here in the United States, happened. And since then, the pollution crisis, the climate crisis, and the biodiversity crisis have increased. And the solutions that we offer are not enough to decrease the gap. So to give you an example, imagine that conservationists, the good team, and there is the other team, and we're in a basketball game. And for every 3 points that the other team scores, we, the good team, score 1 point. It's a hard-earned point, right? But the problem is that, well, it's 3-1, it was 0-0, then it was 3-1, then it was 6-2, then it was 9-3, then it was 12-4. You see? The difference, it keeps increasing. And it's not that we're not doing anything. We are scoring some points and we're fighting hard to score those points. But I think that by redefining nature instead of these places that we're trying to protect, it will allow us the opportunity to, one, make some stops every now and then. So when they come every time, they don't score. And two, instead of scoring 1 point at a time, we start scoring 2 or 3 points. All of a sudden, it will make that gap close up. And why do I say that? Because, well, what we're doing is not working, because when we have laws and when we have paper parks and all of this, sure, if you have a strong government, strong institutions, that protection will happen. But there is always somebody, you will always need that type of protection in order for people to not take those things away. When those protections go away, when those laws changes, or when you have a government change and that goes away, if you didn't change their relationship, somebody's going to say, well, I need those trees to make money. I need the oil to make money. I need to fish more fish than what we need to fish in order to make money. If we don't change their relationship, is my argument, it doesn't matter how many laws we're going to have. We are not going to make the gains that we need to make. So, right, that sounds doomy, but at the same time, I hope that it gives you the hope that it's like, hey, there are ways in which maybe we can do things a different way, and that we don't have to recreate anything new, right? We can learn from indigenous people, right, and what those relationships were. And what happens when we're doing just like the science way, the Western way, the conservation way that we know, We're leaving thousands of years of knowledge out of the equation. We're not listening to the stories of people that live through changes in climate, that live through perhaps the animals being sick. And by not taking that into account, we're losing a lot of ingenuity and creativity to allow us to solve the problems that we face, right? Imagine when, like, perhaps you were like trying to work on a math problem, or you were trying to build something, or just trying to solve something by yourself, and you just couldn't. All of a sudden, you like ask your best friend, "Hey, come here, let's look at this together." Or like 2 or 3 of you came together. All of a sudden, somebody said something that maybe wasn't the solution, but it's like, "Oh, that gives me an idea." And then you guys start working that, because you took advantage of all of the ingenuity and the creativity that was around in order to provide the best solution that you can. And that's what we need to do for conservation, right? We need to use the best information that we have, the most complete information, including what we call like indigenous knowledge or traditional ecological knowledge, as part of the solution, rather than saying science is always better and we need to have the data and the graphs and all of this. It's like, yes, that, and also the experiences of all of these communities and people who have been living in these spaces for 1,000 years and that have stories that we haven't learned and that have purposely or not purposely excluded from conservation and decision. So now moving forward, I wanted to show you this just to show you that we just live in a very complex system. And by system, I mean planet, right? We have marine ecosystems and the climate system and biological and physical and chemical processes. And we have humans, but we're all connected. It's all connected. So when we look at species and conservation, we cannot just say, like, let's do conservation for the species. Or like, for the whales or the shark. It's like we have to consider everything, and humans have to be a part of that, right? Because we are part of that system. When you go to space, you don't see 2 spheres, one that is full of humans and one that is full of nature. You see one space where we are all one thing, one system, all integrated, where we need to figure out solutions that are holistic, right? That include everything instead of separating us.
Right. Just a warning. 1 minute until we're going to transition to question and answer.
Great. I am perfect timing. So, right, moving forward, I want you to consider science and other ways of knowing to make decisions. And that human and people well-being need to be considered as part of conservation. It's not just for the whales. It's not just for the sharks. Yes, it's for them and for us. Because our well-being, our clean water, our clean air, our happiness depends on that as well. And that nature is not an empty space just for recreation. Nature is this place where we have complex relationships, where we have always lived. Lastly, this is the last slide. You don't have to be old like me to protect nature. I think that these are my daughters across the street from my house, just smelling the flowers, creating that relationship, right? And in our garden in front of the house, getting that physical nourishment. So create those relationships with your surroundings that feed your soul and that feed your body. And by taking care of your immediate surrounding, I think that we can make the change that we need to make in order to make the conservation gains that we need to, so you can have a planet that you deserve. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much, Bray. I think that was such an incredible and enlightening presentation, and Tu does so much as well to illustrate the very human and natural story that this is all a part of. And I think that that's really, really an important and powerful element of this too. I wanted to ask a quick question, if I may. In translating the value too of that indigenous knowledge and that human knowledge into ways in which others who haven't necessarily been as connected to nature as you are, how do we make other folks as well see the true value in ways that they too might be a little more understanding of?
I think that it goes with a reconnection of what that reciprocity means, that taking care of us means. I think that because we have been able to replace our relationship with money. And by that, I mean, if I have money, I go to the supermarket and I buy my carrots and I do that. If I have money, I get my air conditioning, right? I pay for the electricity. That has allowed us to replace the shade that I get from the tree. When it's hot, if I have more trees around, it's going to be cooler, right? Neighborhoods that have more trees planted around it, they're cooler because the trees are evapotranspiration, all of these physical and biophysical things. But right, it's making that connection again that we are not separated and we are fully dependent. There is this book by Barbara Kingsolver, Animal Vegetable Miracle, where there is a cute episode where her boyfriend at the time, now her husband, he was planting carrots in his front yard, and the neighborhood kids were running around, and one day he pulled the carrots from the ground, and the kids go like, "Ew, those carrots touch dirt." And he was like, and then he asked the kids like, "Whoa, where do carrots come from?" The supermarket. We have lost that connection. So we as conservationists need to recreate that connection. We need to reclaim that connection and explain it to the level to some people that is like, no, your surroundings, things don't come from a supermarket. They come from you taking care of your surroundings.
Absolutely. And that's so important to say in ways in which people can revalue. And that, as you said, without trees too, we would have so much more necessity to rely on things like money and without nature, we would have so much more of a struggle to re-commoditize something for it. And again, Bri, can you tell us just a little bit more about your background and your connection with nature and how you grew up around it?
Yeah, so right in Colombia, I remember my grandpa saying my grandpa was a hunter, but in his late years, when I got to know him, he just said like, "Mijo, there's just not enough animals. There just isn't enough animals anymore to hunt." And my grandma, my mom's mom, who I was raised by my mother and my grandmother, she used to tell stories about a farm where the only thing that they went out for was coffee and salt. Everything else was produced in the farm. And then later on, she moved to a village where the women on that village, it was a fishing village. They would make ornaments with fish scales. They would clean them up and then would make ornaments with fish scales. But I asked her, like, well, why did people start making those? Like, well, one, there's not enough fish anymore. And two, when we get them, they're not big enough for the scales to be useful to make these things. So I grew up understanding that there have been changes in my grandparents' lifetimes that made it so their surroundings weren't as reliable to provide for their well-being. And I wanted to understand what had caused those changes. And that's what took me to studying biology. But then understanding what had caused those changes is what then drove me into conservation. But my conservation always had people at the center, which is a little bit different than my academic upbringing here in the States, because here in the States was often just like nature and humans separated, and humans were always, because of my grandparents' stories, at the center of my conservation. In my conservation, I always wanted it to. My question was always like, how could I make sure that my grandpa or somebody like my grandpa can always have something to hunt, but there is enough animals out there? How can there be plenty of fish for the fishermen to provide for their family, but not just once, but forever? So to have enough so people can have good lives, but to live enough so they can always provide for themselves and their family. So and I knew that there had to be, conservation was part of that, but it wasn't just separating and providing for the environment, but that there had to be a connection. And that really is what drove me to do what I do today.
That's so powerful as well in actively reconnecting with nature and seeking to rebuild those bonds. Is there anything as well that you would recommend for the youth that are listening to this presentation to go out and do?
I really, guys, like just do something, right? Like plant a little plant that you're gonna eat, plant a little herb that you're gonna eat, and start small. You don't have to start with a gigantic garden. Um, go to something that somebody organized. Like make sure that stop and smell the flower. Make sure that your surrounding, whatever it is, your street, it it gives you joy, because that is part of the environment. You're always in the environment, and that environment should make sure that you're enjoying it, that is nourishing your spirit, and it's nourishing your body. And yes, sometimes we live in polluted places, and that's because we have broken that relationship. So how can you make sure that if you live in a polluted place, that maybe you're the one that starts something, so your neighborhood recreates a good relationship with your surroundings, and all of a sudden your neighborhood goes from being a polluted place to a place where you can have flowers and you can have some food planted on the ground that you can eat and that you can provide for those people around you. So do something. You don't have to be old, and it doesn't have to be something big in a faraway place that it's a pristine place. It can be something in your neighborhood, in your backyard, recreating that relationship of goodness. And when you give something to your surrounding, it will give you something back. And that's the reciprocity that I was talking about.
Incredible, and thank you so much, Brad, for that, and as well for the immense value that perception on life and nature can offer for us. I'm certainly feeling very spiritually, physically, and mentally enriched by the content of your presentation. So I want to thank you again for joining us today, and again, we'll encourage everyone listening to perhaps reach out to you if you'd be open to it to discuss further with you, connecting deeper with
Absolutely.
nature.
Carla has my contact information. It's been a pleasure. I would love to hear from any of you at any time. Please don't hesitate. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much. So now, guys, thank you. I hope you've really enjoyed Brad's presentation. We're going to transition over to a next Menti poll, and we're going to ask you guys now, what is a relationship with your surroundings, with your nature, that you would like to either strengthen or start if you haven't already? So we're going to look at some of the responses here now. And I see that a lot of you guys have said, yep, don't litter. Protecting coral reefs, yeah. I mean, even Alex earlier was discussing how much change he has seen in our local Bermudian waters with respect to the coral reefs and the fish around them. Yeah, to take care of nature. To think of it not as a thing, but as a living thing. That's right. It's something that we rely on, of course, for the quality of our lives. And again, if nature isn't living in a healthy way around us, it's pretty easy to imagine that we won't be doing the same either. Yeah, reducing plastic waste. How often is it that we go out into nature in Bermuda and we see plastic everywhere? That's right, there's trash all over the place. And perhaps that's something that we can engage Sharona's activism with in simply just picking it up and doing something about it and having that better relationship with it to say that I want to take care of that. Not letting your plants die. Yeah, absolutely. Let's take care of them. And they, in turn, will take care of us. That's that reciprocity as well that Bri was referring to. Marine life, yeah. And I see someone in there as well saying, I would like to become a better person. And I think that's super important as well, because this truly is bringing us back and closer to ourselves and closer to each other to be better with ourselves and with nature as well. Yeah, protecting animals. Again, as Bryce said, if we don't have any animals around, and if we didn't have communities that were relying on certain animals, or if those communities didn't have animals that they could rely on, those communities would fall apart pretty quickly. They wouldn't be able to make or produce food from them, and they wouldn't be able to take care of them either. A better person. That's right. Enjoying the ability to let nature ground you. I think that's super important too. There has to be this joy in this. And there really is that joy in nature and that joy in that reciprocity and that better relationship with it. Absolutely. Coral reefs are super, super important to us. And again, if we don't take care of them, then as we heard yesterday, perhaps, we could lose a lot more of them than we would like to. And then we lose that opportunity to have that relationship with them. And that's something that we can easily let go if we don't recognize it as important and recognize that we have a role in taking care of it too. Mangrove trees, that's something too that we can start, and a relationship that we can foster that, as Alex said earlier, has a lot of co-benefits and really can do a lot for us in climate mitigation. It's fantastic, guys. Thank you so much, all, for your responses to those. And again, really want to encourage you to continue to foster that relationship with nature, because at the same time, when we are fighting climate change, we are nature, as Bryce said. And when we're fighting back against climate change, we are in effect nature defending itself. And so again, I want to thank you all for listening in with Bryce's presentation, and to continue to hold that in your hearts as you move forward with developing your own action plans. So now I'm going to turn over to our co-host Leah to introduce some of the other organizations that are actively working to protect that nature.
Thank you so much. As we did yesterday, I would just like to highlight the NGOs that are in partnership with the Youth Climate Summit. The NGO, as we stated yesterday, means non-governmental organization. And these videos just showcase the projects that are held by the different NGOs. And today we have Water Start, KBB, Beyond Plastic, and the Audubon Society. So we will sit back as we watch these non-governmental organization videos today.
My name is Phoebe Barboza Bellamy, and I am the Research and Operations Manager for WaterStart Bermuda. Currently on Burt Island, a small island in the Great Sound, WaterStart is working on 5 different restoration projects. That focuses on seagrass, mangrove, and shellfish restoration, as well as reforestation and permaculture design. All of these projects are working with the local community to try and increase biodiversity and also try and preserve some of the biodiversity that is so important to Bermuda. We run many volunteer days throughout the year, as well as educational field trips and week-long programs. Students can come and join us on Burt Island to not only take part and get their hands physically in and on all of our projects, but also come out there and learn something and gain worldwide certification. The youth's passion and efforts are powerful forces of change. Each one of your creative ideas and efforts to spread awareness and change people's habits are steps forward in shaping a better future. The challenges we face are great, but so is your ability to create these changes. Keep pushing forward, because your efforts will be the foundation of tomorrow's more sustainable planet.
My name is Angel Smith, and I am the Executive Director for Keep Bermuda Beautiful.
And my name is Linda Parker, and I'm the Education and Community Engagement Coordinator for KBB.
One of our guiding principles is educating. Education is key to changing people's mindset. As a recognized local leader in the community improvement, KBB is guided by our first principle, which is education. Education is key to encouraging positive behavior towards community improvement.
One major involvement has been with youth being involved or leading cleanups on land and sea. Do you know that last year 155,000 pounds of litter was collected by our volunteers? Half of them were students on the land and in the sea. If you get involved with KBB as a young person, it's going to become a daily habit. So I feel very hopeful that you, as young people, getting involved in this way for a cleaner, greener, and more beautiful Bermuda, as a young person, it will be your everyday behavior as adults. So I feel very good about the future.
My name is McLean Smith. I've been a volunteer at Beyond Plastic Bermuda since 2021. Beyond Plastic Champions program. We've had about 50 companies sign on to Beyond Plastic Champions program. Had major feedback on it being extremely beneficial to a company to reduce single-use plastics. We have our schools assembly program, which we go into schools across the island from primary and secondary schools and educate them on how to decrease single-use plastics, how to mitigate plastic use, and also the impact that plastics have on not only your human health, animals' health, the environmental health, and ocean. I think beyond plastic, Bermuda's hope is that the legislation to ban single-use plastics comes sooner to Bermuda. I hope to still see youth very involved in mitigating plastic use, and it warms my heart that youth are going home to their families and telling their friends on how to mitigate plastic use. They're educating their friends on the impact of plastic in our oceans, in our environment, and also to human health.
Hi, I'm Dr. Miguel Mejias, and I'm a member of the Bermuda Audubon Society, and we're essentially the oldest environmental organization in Bermuda. We were established in 1954, and our job is basically to either purchase, get donated, or inherit land across Bermuda, turn them into nature reserves, and we essentially do lots of habitat restoration. Previous youth involvement really involves inviting the youth to come out and join us with our tree planting events. So we would normally post something with social media, so Instagram, Facebook, advertising some sort of tree planting event at one of our nature reserves. And yeah, just get the kids excited and interested in Bermuda's nature, biodiversity, and teaching them how to identify certain plants, which ones are endemic or native, and which ones are invasive that need to be removed. And I hope people of this generation, the young, the youth, when they assemble into positions of power someday in the future, I hope they don't forget what they were fighting for when they're younger and use that passion to drive legislation that can help change the world for the better and to slow down the impacts and hopefully one day reverse the negative impacts of climate change.
Hey, right after those videos, I would just like us to refer back to our Menti poll, which should have remained open in the tab that you opened earlier. There will be 2 new questions for you to answer. Our first question, which climate-related projects are new to you? And our second, which climate-related projects would you like to know more about? So I am seeing a lot of Water Start, as well as the week-long programs on Bird Island, also Water Start, Bermuda Audubon Society, the habitat restoration. Oh, a lot of Bermuda Audubon Society with habitat restoration. I'm very excited to see that a lot of people are interested in that, as well as Water Start. They're all really, really good programs and projects that you can get involved in. I love that. Okay. And the second question, which climate-related projects would you like to know more about? That is really a question just for you to be able to think upon so that when you come to the in-person sessions where these NGOs will be present, you can ask them about what you would like to know more about and how to get involved and work on those projects as well. Thank you so much for that. And now I will transition back over to my co-host, William, to talk about our track selection further.
Thanks so much, Leah. And so once again, guys, we hope we're getting your gears spinning a little bit about what type of projects you yourselves would want to be engaged with, what kind of work it would want to be that you would do for nature and against climate change. We've had a lot of examples from youth activists and from our subject matter experts as to the types of projects that you can do. And we want you to think about what category of conservation, sustainability, or climate justice those projects that you might want to pursue might most squarely fall within. So once again, conservation, that is the act of preserving nature. And again, we can think about that as in Sharona, even picking up trash, or even Bry, who talked to us a little bit about, again, the relationship that we have with nature and how important it is that we conserve nature so that we can have that reciprocal relationship with it. We want you to think about whether it might be sustainability that you're engaged with, whether, again, recognizing that climate change is being driven by human impacts predominantly, and that's actions like burning fossil fuels are absolutely contributing to climate change, whether we might want to pursue some projects that could mitigate that and prevent it. Projects around green energy, for example, like Alex is studying, or maybe mangrove planting even to sequester carbon that is emitted from there. Or whether it might be something along the lines of climate justice and giving a voice to those who are most affected by climate change, and again, to seeking to engage the broad social and economic justice aspects that climate change tends to influence and tends to detract from. Once again, we want to remind you that if you are an alumni to YCS, and we're very glad that you've come back again, that as you have pre-registered for this, we would like you to select that track as we can designate a separate and special role for you guys too. So we'll hope you continue to think about those as we will go on tomorrow to pick our tracks. And then on the in-person session on Friday, you will be divided up into those respective tracks. And then you'll be working with the other students in the YCS who have chosen that track and coming up with projects of your own to work on throughout the year. We're now going to transition into the next segment of our program in which we're going to welcome back another one of those Youth Climate Summit alumni. So once again, give me a hand in welcoming Desiree Darrell.
Hi, everyone. I'm Desiree Darrell. I'm currently a student at Summersfield Academy, and I'm 15. I've been a part of the Youth Climate Summit, so this is my second year, and I'm now back as an alumni.
Wonderful. And thanks so much, Des, for joining us. I think we've got a video as well that we're going to run in the background from the project that you've been engaged with. Just while that's playing, Des, can you tell us a little bit about the track that you chose when you were getting involved with YCS and why it was that you chose that one?
Yeah, so I had chosen the conservation track. Most of it, a part of it stemmed specifically from my dad, him being a conservationist, seeing all the work that he does. It was really inspirational for me, and I've always kind of been inspired by him and looking up to him. And a part of it was also when I moved back to Bermuda. So I lived in New Zealand for a decent part of my life. But when we moved back here in 2018, just seeing a lot of Bermuda's rich wildlife, our native and endemic species, but also seeing those invasive species that are kind of taking over some of our environment, it made me really passionate about trying to limit those invasive species and introduce more of our native and endemic species.
That's fantastic. Can you tell us again a little bit more about the actions even of mitigating the growth of invasive species and the huge impact and important impact of preserving those endemic and native ones?
Yeah, so definitely, as you can see on the screen right now, was a part of our tree planting project that we did, which was we planted a lot of our native and endemic species in this area that you see here. And really, trees have such a big impact on us as people. And, they provide us with shade, they provide us with clean oxygen. So just thinking about everything that we're given from those native and endemic species that we have here. And I think a big part of it is just having that connection with nature and knowing that our impact, what we do, impacts those native endemic species, and it's also going to impact us in the long run.
Incredible, and so good too to see how much more of a connection that you've been able to build with this, and that too this connection with our natural environment and our local Bermudian endemic environment is so important. Can you tell us a little bit about the impact that you think this project will have, and what the wider significance of it might be to Bermuda?
Mm-hmm. So for our project, it included all three of the tracks that we did. So it included climate justice, sustainability, and it also included conservation. So we did the tree planting, and then we also did a coastal cleanup. So we had the opportunity to really introduce more of those native and endemic species that in the long run are helping us. And we were also able to participate in the KBB coastal cleanup, which is happening right now. And just with sustainability, making us more sustainable and really just looking at that impact. And a part of it was not only really helping the environment, but a big part of it is also you get those connections in the community. You meet those other young people that are like you, that have that passion for the environment, and really want to see Bermuda thrive.
That's so fantastic, and there's so much that's likable and really incredibly lovable about this project and about the connection too that's being fostered there. But is there something that you personally like the most about it?
I think for me, it was definitely a step out of my comfort zone. I'm kind of the type of person where I don't worry too much about like small presentations in front of a class or something like that. But through this project, I also had the opportunity to present to the non-governmental organizations and also the corporate sponsors that YCS has. And it definitely took me out of my comfort zone. being able to present to all these big names in the business. And also, just like I said, meeting those other young people that have that passion for passion for the environment like I do. And I think a part of it is you kind of never really know where to get involved. And having that opportunity to get involved with the Youth Climate Summit, meet all these new people and these activists was really inspirational for me. And then I think also like seeing the impacts that these projects have. A lot of the time I look around when I see these type of projects happening, you find that the more they happen, the more people get involved, the larger they become, the more people there are. So I just know how impactful it is. And I think my biggest takeaway was really just becoming more open-minded, looking out for those opportunities to be able to jump at them and do anything that I can to become more engaged and help Bermuda have a better future, really. And yeah, like I said, meeting all those new people is really a big part of it as well.
That's so fantastic. And such a way to amplify your effort too, even in just having that nature and being able to express its value to some of those actors that you talked about in discussing that with big companies and non-governmental organizations, perhaps even members of government too, who we can actively engage with here in Bermuda. And as Bryce said earlier, there is such an important and powerful way for us to bring that value of nature back to these folks and to engage them closer in reconnecting with nature and really prioritizing valuing it. So is there anything else as well that you can say that absolutely changed you about this project?
I mean, yeah, even like seeing the video here in front of us, just seeing there's an age variety and all those people getting involved and really understanding that like we saw from our subject matters presentation, you don't have to be involved you don't have to be old to make a difference. We're here coming together as youth, and I don't know how many of us there are doing the Youth Climate Summit this year, but just seeing that really we can make a difference. You just have to put your mind to it. And if you believe that you can do something, then you will be able to do it.
I think that's so powerful, Desiree, and thanks so much for sharing that too. I think all of you who are listening to this, who are thinking about your tracks and your projects, you really can pursue that and you really can build it if, as Des said, you put your mind to it. And know that, as the other activists have said too, that you can always work together with others too, and that is a relationship that we can cultivate with each other. So thanks so much, Des, and we're so happy you came to join us, and we're so happy you're still participating in the YCS, because this continued relationship that everyone is building together in taking care of the environment is what's going to build a better one for all of us.
I think one last thing to really look at our impact from that project was that when we did our beach cleanup at Shelley Bay, 470 pounds of trash was removed in just 3 hours. And also at East Palm, being able to plant around 150 trees that are native and endemic and really are going to benefit our environment and us in turn was a big part of that impact as well.
That's so huge, and it really provides a lot of measurement too, for even as Bri had remarked upon, the value that science and indigenous knowledge can have in coming together. Because some people as well might be looking for numbers, or they might be looking for ways to quantify the value of nature in ways that they might be a little bit more akin to understanding. And two, if you can say that in 3 hours you're able to get rid of that much trash, or you're able to plant that much, those many trees that can then sequester that much carbon, there's a lot of value that you can then transform and really have a powerful transformative impact. So thanks so much for that, Des, and we hope you'll continue. Okay, guys, I think we're coming towards the end of our programming for today, but I'm going to pass over to my co-host Leah again to introduce our final Menti poll before we say goodbye.
Thank you. As William said, I am introducing our final Menti poll of the day, and our question of the day is: what gave you hope today throughout all of these sessions? Did any of these sessions enlighten you? Did anything that the presenters have said give you just a certain spark for you to believe in? So what gave you hope today during this session? That no matter how old you are, you can make a positive impact on the environment. Yes, 100%. Your age does not matter. How early you start something does not matter. You can make a positive impact on the environment whenever you choose to begin. Seeing all of the people helping in Bermuda, yes, 100%. When our community comes together to start something, it will most likely succeed as long as we are all putting our minds together. Knowing that you can do something about climate change. Knowing that there's a solution to climate problems and it's just a matter of applying them. Learning that there are actually people committed to making this happen. Yes, 100%. I totally agree. Small actions can be very helpful to the environment. Yes, knowing that people care just as much as you do is very inspiring, and it leaves a lot of hope that we can do something to make this better, the situation better. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of people talking about how they are realizing that you're never too young to make a change in your environment. That's a very important thing for us to all learn, that it does not matter how young you are. You can always decide to make a change. These are all really great responses. I'm really loving the thinking that we are doing here. And now I would just like to talk a little bit more in depth about tomorrow's track selection process, just so that everyone knows what we are doing tomorrow. Just so that everyone remembers, our three tracks are conservation, sustainability, and climate justice, along with a special alumni session for those who have pre-registered into the summit as alumni. Conservation, simply the act of safekeeping existing resources for present and future generations. Sustainability, the regenerative use of resources that sustains our needs today without compromising the needs of future generations. Climate justice, giving a voice to those most vulnerable to the negative impacts of climate change, and a say in climate action. These three tracks are all very important to the Youth Climate Summit's vision, and I really hope that you all will take time to think about what track you would like to choose, especially as it will shape what you are doing if you choose to remain in the year-long initiative for the Youth Climate Summit. And I'm very excited for everyone to be able to be picking their tracks tomorrow and to just commit to what they will be doing. And now I would like to pass back to my co-host for our final closing.
Thanks so much, Leah. And thank you, all of you, for joining us again today. We really hope that you've taken some time to think about the presentations we heard. I was really pleased to see how much hope really you guys might be feeling right now about our true ability and capacity and agency to make a positive change in our communities and in the world too. Your efforts are so valuable, and they're so much more valuable too when we're working on projects together and when we amplify our impact by being less of an individual and more of a community, and more of a community as well with nature. Just before we close out, I'd like to take a brief moment to thank some of the other members in our community, namely the sponsors of the Youth Climate Summit, who have been very helpful and supportive and generous in our continued programming here. We're very happy to continue to build community and to continue to push climate change action forward with you, and we hope as well that you'll continue to engage with us all. Thank you all so much for tuning in to the Youth Climate Summit second day. We're looking forward to seeing you again tomorrow and again on the in-person days on Thursday and Friday. Thanks so much, everybody, and have a blessed day.
Thank you so much. See you tomorrow.